They are not coming in a straight line. That is the first thing you need to understand. 27 fast attack craft, fanning out across a narrow stretch of the Persian Gulf, cutting different angles, running at different speeds, some lagging behind to feed confusion into the picture. From the destroyer's bridge, the radar return doesn't look like a military formation, it looks like noise. And that is exactly the point. This is not a frontal assault. This is a detection contest. And it started before a single boat left the dock. The real question this scenario forces is not whether Aegis can shoot, it can. The question is whether the system can correctly sort 27 moving surface contacts, assign threat priority to each one, identify which boats are decoys, which are carrying anti-ship missiles, which are carrying suicide payloads, and which are just there to make the geometry worse. All before the first one crosses inside 1 nautical mile. Because at the speeds these boats run, 1 nautical mile is roughly 40 seconds. Welcome to the engagement envelope nobody likes to talk about. The IRGCN, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, has spent decades designing a problem specifically for American destroyers, not for carriers, not for submarines. For surface warships operating alone or in small groups, inside a body of water that is never more than 200 miles wide and never more than 170 feet deep at its shallowest channel. The Strait of Hormuz is not open ocean. It is a compression zone, and the boats Iran built were engineered for exactly that geometry. The Siraj 1 is the flagship of that fleet. Reverse engineered from a stolen Blade Runner 51 racing hull, built in Bandar Abbas, armed with a bow-mounted 7mm DSK heavy machine gun and 107mm 12-barrel rocket launcher. Iran claims modified variants reach 85 knots. The original racing hull achieved 71 knots at 13.5 tons. Add weapons, fuel, crew, and combat load, an independent analyst pegged the real combat speed closer to 55 to 60 knots. That is still faster than anything the destroyer can do. It is faster than most naval helicopters can reposition. And when you multiply it by 27 simultaneous vectors, it stops being a speed problem and starts being a geometry problem. Here is where the contest shifts. The Aegis combat system aboard an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer carries the ANSPY-1 phased array radar, 4 fixed antenna faces, no rotation, continuous all-around coverage. It is designed to track hundreds of airborne threats simultaneously, discriminate ballistic missile re-entry vehicles from decoys, and cue standard missiles for intercepts at ranges exceeding 100 nautical miles. That is what Aegis was built to do. High altitude, high speed, high value targets. The system is one of the most sophisticated pieces of radar engineering ever put to sea. Small boats skimming the surface at 50 knots are a different problem. The SPY-1 is fundamentally an air search radar. Its tracking algorithms are optimized for airborne threats above the horizon. Surface contacts in a cluttered littoral environment, shallow water, coastal geography, radar ground returns, wave action, generate noise, lots of it. At close range, the system has to sort genuine threats from false echoes created by the water itself. That sorting takes compute cycles. Compute cycles take fractions of a second, and fractions of a second, compounded across 27 tracks in a closing engagement, are not academic. They are decisive. The Iranians know this. That is not speculation, it is doctrine. Every real incident in the Strait of Hormuz follows the same template. Multiple boats approach on intersecting vectors. Some accelerate, some slow down, some maneuver hard. The formation never moves as a clean coordinated unit, because a clean coordinated unit is easy to track and easy to engage. The chaos is the tactic. The sensor workload is the weapon. In December 2022, an Iranian patrol boat attempted to laser blind American warships as they transited the strait. Not a missile, a laser. The objective was the sensor, not the hull. That tells you something important about how Iran thinks about this fight. They are not trying to win the kinetic exchange on the first move. They are trying to degrade the destroyer's picture first. Now run that logic at scale, with 27 boats instead of 1. The destroyer's combat systems team is working in real time. Threat designation, weapons assignment, deck gun crews, CIW positioning, helicopter coordination if there is a helicopter airborne. Every one of those functions is drawing on the same command bandwidth. The boat swarm does not need to overwhelm the destroyer's weapons to win. It only needs to overwhelm the crew's ability to maintain a clean, accurate, prioritized picture, because the moment one track gets misclassified, decoy called a threat called a decoy, the geometry changes. And the geometry is already brutal. At 55 knots, a fast attack boat covers 1 nautical mile in roughly 65 seconds. The failing CIWS, the close-in weapon system, the last hard kill layer before impact, engages at a maximum effective range of approximately 1 nautical mile. That is 65 seconds of phalanx coverage per incoming boat. Against one boat, that is comfortable. Against 7 boats closing simultaneously from different angles, you have 1 phalanx on the stern and the ship's M2142 chain guns and .50 caliber mounts covering the flanks. Against 27 boats on a coordinated approach, the geometry runs out before the ammunition does. This is the part that changes the picture. Aegis does not stop a swarm by shooting missiles at boats. The standard missile is designed for airborne threats. Firing SM-2s at surface contacts is technically possible, but operationally absurd. It is a $2 million solution to a $50,000 problem, and the destroyer carries fewer than 100 VLS cells total. Expenditure rate against a swarm at that scale would hollow out the magazine in minutes, and a destroyer with an empty VLS is a destroyer that cannot defend against the air threat that arrives 40 minutes later. The Navy understands this. That is exactly why the engagement playbook for a swarm is not Aegis primary. It is helicopter primary with gun systems in depth and Aegis in reserve. The SH-60 Seahawk, if it is airborne, if it is armed, if it has been queued in time, is the weapon of choice against surface fast movers at range before they close to visual contact. The word "if" is doing a lot of work in that sentence. In a real-world Gulf scenario, the destroyer may be operating with 1 helicopter. It may be in maintenance. The forward arming and refueling point may be shore-based, which means the helicopter must leave the engagement to rearm. Each sortie cycle takes time. The swarm does not pause for sortie cycles. And here is where the hunter versus hunter dynamic reaches its sharpest edge. Iran is not just sending boats. Iran is timing the boats. The most dangerous version of this scenario is not 27 boats attacking simultaneously. It is 27 boats attacking in 2 waves, with the first wave designed to force the destroyer's helicopter airborne, and the second wave timed to arrive just as that helicopter returns to the deck to rearm. That is not a theory. That is a pattern consistent with how IRGCN's small boat doctrine has evolved over the last 15 years. The force-on-force contest is also a timing contest, and the side that controls tempo in a swarm engagement controls the outcome. By May 2026, Trump's own public statements confirmed that U.S. forces had struck Iranian fast attack craft in the Strait during Operation Brick Freedom, as the Navy escorted commercial vessels through a strait that had been effectively closed since February airstrikes on Iran. Iran disputed the account. What was not disputed, the strait was still contested, the boats were still operating, and the U.S. Navy was physically escorting ships through a passage that 3 months earlier moved 20% of the world's seaborne oil without a single warship present. That is not a show of force. That is a force substituting for a system that broke. Now here is the reinterpretation. The question, can Aegis stop them, frames this as a technology problem. Aegis versus boats. Phased array radar versus fiberglass hulls. That framing is incomplete. The real contest is positional. It is about who established the geometry before the engagement began. Iran's 38 coastal bases and island fortifications along the Persian Gulf coastline are not logistics sites. They are pre-positioned launch points designed to put boats into the water simultaneously from multiple directions, eliminating the destroyer's ability to establish a single threat axis. The boats disperse before they are in radar range. They approach under the radar horizon of coastal geography. They time their emergence to coincide with periods of high commercial traffic density, which floods the tactical picture with non-threat surface contacts that the combat system must classify in real time. The destroyer is not detecting a swarm. The destroyer is trying to find a swarm that is already inside the tactical environment, and finding it late changes every timing assumption the engagement plan was built on. So what does the Navy actually bring to win this fight? The answer is not one destroyer. It is never supposed to be one destroyer alone. The doctrine solution is layered. Maritime patrol aircraft for early detection beyond the visual horizon, surface action groups, rather than single ships, helicopter coordination at range, and increasingly, unmanned surface vessels designed specifically for close-in swarm engagement without placing a phalanx mount as the final line. The US-9 proceedings analysis flagged this years ago. The Aegis ship directs the defense network. It is not meant to absorb the entire engagement alone, but doctrine is what happens in planning. What happens in execution depends on what assets are actually available, where they are positioned, and how much warning time the intelligence picture provided before the first boat left the dock. Iran unveiled a boat in April 2025, claiming 116 knots, faster than any operational fast attack craft in any navy. Independent analysts questioned the figure, but the trajectory is real. Faster, lower signature, harder to classify, designed to arrive inside the engagement window faster than the previous generation. The Aegis combat system receives software upgrades. The SPY-1 radar has been refined. The fleet is integrating unmanned surface platforms. The race is ongoing, and here is the strategic meaning beneath all of it. The swarm threat is not designed to sink a destroyer. Sinking a destroyer triggers a war Iran cannot win conventionally. The swarm is designed to make the Strait of Hormuz too operationally costly to patrol without a large, sustained force commitment. To convert a geography Iran cannot deny militarily into a geography it can make expensive enough that the US calculates the price of presence differently. 20% of global seaborne oil, 170 feet of depth, a 200-mile wide compression zone with 40 years of Iranian infrastructure built to contest it. The boats are not the weapon. The cost-imposition calculation is the weapon, and that is the fight no radar system resolves on its own. If you want to understand where this contest is actually heading, what the Unmanned Surface Program means, why the Navy's Distributed Maritime Operations Doctrine is a direct answer to this exact problem, and what the next 2 years of Gulf posture look like, that breakdown is coming next.